a ghost ship Mary Celeste. Imagine sailing across the freezing Atlantic Ocean and spotting a ship drifting aimlessly through the fog. Its sails are still up. Its cargo is untouched. The crew's belongings remain exactly where they left them. The captain's pipe still sits on the table. Half-eaten food rests in the galley. And yet, not a single soul is aboard. No signs of violence, no blood, no struggle, just silence, an impossible silence. That ship was called the Mary Celeste, and nearly 150 years later, nobody truly knows what happened to the 10 people who vanished from it. Some say pirates attacked. Others blame sea monsters. Some believe the crew went mad, and there are even theories involving aliens, time warps, and paranormal forces. But the truth may be even more terrifying, because whatever happened aboard the Mary Celeste happened so suddenly that experienced sailors abandoned a perfectly seaworthy ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, and they were never seen again. Tonight, we are diving deep into one of the greatest unsolved maritime mysteries in history. But before we begin, if you enjoy true-life horror mysteries, abandoned places, and unsolved disappearances, hit that like button and subscribe now, because the ocean still holds secrets humanity may never uncover. Chapter 1. The Ship Itself. To understand the mystery of the Mary Celeste, we first need to understand the ship itself. The vessel was not originally called the Mary Celeste. When it was first built in 1861 in Nova Scotia, Canada, it was named Amazon, and almost immediately, strange things began happening. On the ship's very first voyage, its captain suddenly became gravely ill. He died shortly afterward. That was only the beginning. Over the next several years, the Amazon suffered multiple accidents. It collided with fishing equipment. It smashed into another ship in the English Channel. Storms repeatedly damaged it. Owners lost money. Captains changed frequently. Sailors began whispering that the vessel was cursed. Now, sailors in the 1800s were extremely superstitious. The sea was unpredictable and brutal. A single storm could erase an entire crew forever. So when strange events surrounded a ship repeatedly, people noticed. Eventually, after years of financial trouble and damage, the Amazon was abandoned. But its story was not over. In 1968, American businessmen purchased the damaged vessel, rebuilt it, and renamed it the Mary Celeste. The ship measured about 100 feet long. It was a brigantine, a two-masted sailing vessel designed for cargo transport. Not glamorous, not legendary, just another hard-working merchant ship crossing dangerous oceans. Or so it seemed, because in 1872, the Mary Celeste would become immortal. Its new captain was Benjamin Spooner Briggs, and by all accounts, Briggs was one of the most respected captains in America. He was deeply religious, intelligent, experienced, calm under pressure, not the kind of man who panicked easily. Friends described him as cautious and disciplined. He had spent much of his life at sea and knew the Atlantic Ocean better than most, which makes what happened next even more disturbing, because Captain Briggs was not traveling alone. He brought his wife Sarah and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia aboard the voyage. Think about that. A captain would never bring his family onto a ship he considered unsafe. That detail becomes incredibly important later. Alongside them were 7 crew members, all experienced sailors, none known for violence or instability. The Mary Celeste left New York Harbor on the 7th of November, 1872. Its destination was Genoa, Italy. Its cargo, more than 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol, highly flammable, dangerous, and under certain conditions, explosive. At first, the voyage appeared completely normal. Weather was not unusually severe. The crew was skilled. The ship was seaworthy. Everything suggested the Mary Celeste should arrive safely in Europe. But it never did. Instead, nearly a month later, another ship would discover something that would shock the entire world. Chapter 2. The Discovery. On the 4th December 1872, the British ship Dei Gracia was sailing near the Azores Islands in the Atlantic Ocean. Its crew noticed something strange on the horizon, a ship drifting erratically. Its movements made no sense. The sails looked damaged. The vessel seemed unstable. Captain David Morehouse studied it carefully. Then he realized something shocking. He recognized the ship. It was the Mary Celeste. And that made no sense. The two captains actually knew each other. Both ships had departed New York around the same time. But now the Mary Celeste was drifting alone in open water. Captain Morehouse attempted to signal the vessel. No response. Again, nothing. No sailors appeared on deck. No movement. No sound. Only the creaking of wood against the sea. Something was terribly wrong. A boarding party was sent over. As the men climbed aboard, they expected chaos, perhaps murder, perhaps storm damage, maybe disease. Instead, they found something far stranger. The ship was abandoned, completely abandoned, but not destroyed. That is the detail that transformed this case into one of history's greatest mysteries. The Mary Celeste was still seaworthy. Yes, some sails were damaged. There was a little water in the hull, but experienced sailors later confirmed the vessel could absolutely still sail. So why abandon it? The crew's personal belongings remained on board: clothing, money, pipes, tools, even valuables. If pirates had attacked, why leave everything behind? The cargo was still there too, over 1,700 barrels of alcohol, untouched. No signs of theft, no evidence of violence, no blood, no bodies, nothing. The captain's cabin looked almost normal. Sarah Briggs' sewing machine still held unfinished work. The crew's meals appeared partially prepared. One report even claimed the captain's shaving soap remained on the table. It looked as if everyone vanished in the middle of ordinary life. And then came perhaps the creepiest detail of all. The ship's lifeboat was missing, meaning the crew likely left voluntarily. But why? What could possibly force an experienced captain to abandon a functioning ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean? And remember, Captain Briggs had his wife and small child on board. No sane father would willingly enter a tiny lifeboat in rough ocean conditions unless he believed staying aboard was even more dangerous. The last entry in the ship's logbook was dated November 25th, 9 days before the ship was discovered. It placed the Mary Celeste near the Azores. After that, nothing. No final message. No distress signal. No explanation. The crew of the Dei Gracia searched every inch of the vessel. Nothing. It was as though 10 human beings had simply disappeared into thin air. News of the discovery exploded across newspapers around the world. People became obsessed. And almost immediately, theories began flooding in. Theories that continue even today. Chapter 3: Pirates, Murder, and Mutiny. The first explanation many people considered was piracy. After all, the Atlantic Ocean in the 1800s could still be dangerous. Ships occasionally vanished. Criminals targeted cargo vessels. And a ship found abandoned naturally raised suspicions. But there was a major problem with the pirate theory. Nothing valuable had been taken. The crew's possessions remained untouched. The cargo was still on board, and industrial alcohol could be sold for enormous profit. Why would pirates abandon all of it? Some suggested the attack was interrupted. Others argued the pirates may have panicked. But investigators found no evidence of battle, no sword marks, no bullet holes, no blood, no damaged cargo. The ship simply did not look like a crime scene. Then came another theory: mutiny. Perhaps the crew rebelled against Captain Briggs. Maybe they killed everyone and escaped. At first glance, this seemed possible. Life aboard ships in the 1800s was brutal. Food spoiled. Storms killed constantly. Arguments between sailors and captains were common. But once again, the evidence did not fit. Captain Briggs was respected. There were no reports of conflict, and the crew members themselves were carefully selected and experienced. Most importantly, if mutiny occurred, where did the mutineers go? Why abandon the ship? Why not sail it somewhere and claim the cargo? Another accusation targeted Captain Morehouse and the crew of the Dei Gracia. Some investigators suspected salvage fraud. Under maritime law, salvaging abandoned ships could earn massive financial rewards. So conspiracy theories emerged, claiming the Dei Gratia crew murdered everyone aboard the Mary Celeste and staged the mystery. This theory spread rapidly, but again, evidence was weak. There were no signs of violence, and coordinating such a complex cover-up in the middle of the ocean would have been extremely difficult. Investigators interrogated the Dei Gratia crew extensively. Nothing suspicious emerged. In fact, many experts believed Captain Morehouse appeared genuinely disturbed by what he found, yet public fascination only grew stronger. The lack of answers created a perfect breeding ground for imagination. Newspapers exaggerated details. Writers invented fake evidence. Stories spread claiming food was still warm on the table when the ship was found. Others claimed cups of tea sat untouched. Many of these details were fictional, but they captured public attention. And then, one famous writer would make the mystery legendary forever. In 1984, author Arthur Conan Doyle, years before creating Sherlock Holmes, published a fictional story inspired by the Mary Celeste. He changed the ship's name slightly and added dramatic murders, supernatural elements, and mystery. The public loved it, but there was a problem. People began confusing fiction with reality. Over time, the myth became larger than the actual case. The Mary Celeste transformed from a maritime mystery into a supernatural legend, and that opened the door to even stranger theories. Chapter 4: Sea Monsters, UFOs, and the Paranormal. Whenever a mystery remains unsolved long enough, human imagination fills the gaps, and few mysteries inspired more bizarre theories than the Mary Celeste. Some people believed a giant sea creature attacked the ship. Remember, in the late 1800s, much of the deep ocean remained unexplored. Gigantic squids were still considered almost mythical. Strange carcasses occasionally washed ashore. Sailors reported terrifying creatures beneath the waves. So when an entire crew vanished, without explanation, sea monsters became a serious theory for many people. Imagine it, a massive tentacled creature rising from the darkness, dragging sailors screaming into the sea. The remaining crew panicking and escaping into the lifeboat. Terrifying. But there was no physical evidence supporting it. No massive damage. No slime. No torn railings. Still, the idea refused to die. Then as came paranormal theories. Some claimed the ship itself was cursed from the beginning. Remember its troubled history as the Amazon. Deaths, accidents, financial ruin. Perhaps something haunted the vessel. Perhaps the crew encountered a ghostly presence at sea. Others connected the mystery to the Bermuda Triangle. Even though the ship was not actually discovered inside the triangle, later storytellers linked the two anyway. Disappearances, magnetic anomalies, time distortions, vanishing ships. The Mary Celeste fit perfectly into those legends. Then, during the rise of UFO fascination in the 20th century, alien abduction theories appeared. According to some believers, extraterrestrials removed the crew entirely. No bodies, no struggle, just gone. As wild as these theories sound, they reveal something important about human psychology. People struggle to accept mysteries without answers. We want closure. We want explanations. And when evidence is incomplete, imagination takes over. But among all the bizarre theories surrounding the Mary Celeste, one explanation continues gaining support among historians and maritime experts. An explanation grounded not in fantasy, but in fear, because the cargo aboard the Mary Celeste may have transformed the ship into a floating bomb. Chapter 5: The Explosion Theory. Of all the theories surrounding the Mary Celeste, the explosion theory may be the most convincing. Remember the cargo. 700 barrels of industrial alcohol. Highly volatile. Highly flammable. Dangerous even under ideal conditions. Now imagine those barrels heating under pressure inside a ship crossing the Atlantic Ocean. Alcohol vapors could build up invisibly. One spark, and the entire ship could explode. Experts later discovered something fascinating. When the cargo was examined, 9 barrels were empty. Not broken, empty. And those specific barrels were made from red oak instead of white oak. Red oak is more porous, meaning alcohol vapors could slowly leak into the ship. That detail changed everything. Some historians believe Captain Briggs may have smelled fumes or heard a sudden noise, perhaps a pressure blast from the cargo hold. Not a massive fiery explosion, or perhaps a violent burst of vapor, enough to terrify experienced sailors. Imagine hearing a thunderous boom beneath your feet in the middle of the ocean. You are carrying explosive cargo. You have your wife and child aboard. You do not know whether the ship will ignite at any second. Panic becomes understandable. According to this theory, Briggs may have ordered everyone temporarily into the lifeboat while the ship aired out. They could have tied the lifeboat to the Mary Celeste using a rope, wait at a safe distance, then return once the danger passed. But something went horribly wrong. A sudden storm, a snapped rope, a wave, strong winds. The lifeboat drifted away. The crew watched helplessly as the Mary Celeste disappeared into the fog. And in the open Atlantic, a tiny lifeboat had almost no chance of survival. This theory explains many details. Why the ship was abandoned quickly. Why valuables were left behind. Why there was no violence. Why the lifeboat was missing. And why experienced sailors made what appears to be an irrational decision. Fear. Pure fear. There is another chilling detail. Modern experiments conducted 4 documentaries recreated alcohol vapor explosions. Researchers discovered such blasts can produce loud shock waves without leaving burn marks. Exactly what investigators observed aboard the Mary Celeste. No fire, no major damage, just sudden terror. But even this theory leaves unanswered questions. Why was not the emergency pump fully operational? Why were navigational instruments missing? Did Briggs intentionally bring them into the lifeboat? And most haunting of all, why was the crew never found? No bodies, no wreckage, no trace. It is as if the Atlantic Ocean swallowed them completely. And perhaps that is exactly what happened. If you are still watching, comment below with your personal theory. Do you think the Mary Celeste crew panicked because of an explosion? Or do you believe something far stranger happened in the Atlantic that night? And if you enjoy deep dive mysteries like this, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because the next story we cover might be even more terrifying. Chapter 6. The Final Hours. Now let us imagine the final hours aboard the Mary Celeste, not as fiction, but as realistically as possible. It is late November 1872. Cold Atlantic winds whip across the deck. The sea grows rough. Below deck, invisible alcohol fumes slowly spread through the cargo hold. Perhaps sailors begin noticing a strange smell. Maybe someone reports unusual sounds. Then suddenly, boom, a violent pressure burst erupts below. No flames, but enough force to shake the ship. Captain Briggs instantly understands the danger. If the cargo ignites, everyone on board dies. He has seconds to decide. His wife, his child, his crew. He orders evacuation. Quickly, temporarily. The lifeboat is lowered. Essential navigation tools are brought along. Perhaps they expect to return within minutes. The crew ties the lifeboat to the ship. The Mary Celeste continues drifting. Then weather worsens. Wind intensifies. Waves slam against the small boat. The rope strains. Snaps. Suddenly, the crew is separated from the ship. Imagine the horror. The Mary Celeste slowly moving farther away. The captain desperately trying to regain control. The ocean growing darker, colder, violent. A tiny lifeboat against the Atlantic Ocean is almost helpless. Without protection, survival time becomes limited. Exposure, dehydration, storms, massive waves. Within hours or days, they may all have perished, and the ocean kept their secret forever. This reconstruction is not proven. Many historians consider it the most plausible explanation. And honestly, that possibility may be scarier than ghosts, because it means ordinary human fear. A single terrible decision made under pressure doomed everyone aboard. No monsters, no paranormal curse, just panic and the unforgiving sea. Chapter 7. The Legacy of the Mary Celeste. The Mary Celeste mystery never truly disappeared. Generation after generation continued investigating the case. Books were written, documentaries filmed, movies inspired, and still, no definitive answer emerged. The ship itself continued sailing for years after the incident. That surprises many people. The famous ghost ship did not immediately vanish. After being salvaged, the Mary Celeste returned to service. Had its dark reputation followed it everywhere, sailors feared it. Owners struggled with it. Eventually, in 1885, the ship met its final fate. Its last captain intentionally ran it onto a reef near Haiti as a part of an insurance fraud scheme. The attempt failed, and the Mary Celeste was abandoned permanently. Even in death, the ship carried scandal and mystery. Today, the Mary Celeste remains one of history's most famous ghost ships, and perhaps its enduring power comes from one terrifying truth. The mystery feels possible. Unlike fantasy stories involving vampires or monsters, this could happen. Real people, real fear, real disappearance. 10 human beings vanished into the Atlantic Ocean without leaving answers behind. And despite modern technology, despite satellites, sonar, and advanced research, we still do not know exactly what happened. The ocean covers more than 70% of Earth. Huge portions remain unexplored. Even today, ships disappear, planes vanish, people are swallowed by storms and never found. The sea is beautiful, but it is also ancient, violent, and indifferent. And perhaps the Mary Celeste reminds us of something humanity hates admitting. Nature does not always give answers. Sometimes mysteries remain mysteries forever. Final chapter. What really happened? So what really happened aboard the Mary Celeste? Was it alcohol vapor and panic, pirates, mutiny, a rogue wave, or something we still do not understand? Here is what makes the case unforgettable. Every explanation contains gaps. The explosion theory is logical, but unproven. Pirates make sense historically, but not physically. Mutiny lacks evidence. Paranormal theories remain speculation. And because no survivors existed, the truth died with the crew. Somewhere beneath the Atlantic Ocean, perhaps buried under miles of darkness, may rest the remains of the missing lifeboat. Maybe one day technology will uncover it. Maybe clues still wait below the waves, or maybe the ocean has already erased them forever. But until then, the Mary Celeste continues drifting through history as the ultimate ghost ship, silent, empty, and terrifying. Imagine standing aboard that vessel alone, hearing only the creaking wood, the wind, the waves, looking into empty cabins where families once slept, knowing 10 people vanished without explanation, and realizing you may never know why. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the mystery of the Mary Celeste, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more true-life horror mysteries and unexplained disappearances. And before you go, tell me in the comments, what do you think happened to the crew of the Mary Celeste? I will be reading your theories. Until next time, stay curious and stay out of the fog.